Hello everyone and welcome to our next author Q&A with Chat Physics Live. Here I have Lewis Matheson. Hello Lewis.
Hello, good evening. I hope you're doing really well.
Absolutely. And Lewis is here today to talk about his A-level physics daily workout book. So later on in this discussion, we're going to give you guys at home the chance to win one of these books, which we will arrange to get sent to you. So give you the opportunity to drop your name into the comments a little bit later on. Just wait for that so we can get it organised. So Lewis, tell us about how you came up with the idea of creating this daily workout book for A-level students.
Okay, so I suppose I originally never thought I'd be writing a book. I thought that would seem like far too much effort, but then I thought, well, how hard can it be? And I suppose I really came up with the idea when I was in the gym, and a lot of the time people maybe, I suppose there's a few analogies here about maybe running or maybe doing an event that you might have in the future. And I thought, a lot of people have a goal maybe a couple of years down the line, and they know what training they should be doing for it. And there's lots of very knowledgeable people out there who know about how to put together a fitness plan. But when it comes to it, people don't really stick to it. And then they sort of tend to leave all their training to the last minute and maybe don't achieve what they want to.
True.
And I thought A-level physics is a bit like that, because you've got, when you sign up to do A-level physics, you've got a fixed deadline, which is 2 years in advance. And that date isn't going to change. And there's a certain prescribed amount of content that you need to know about. And the exam will be a certain format. And the students know that. And they still leave all of their revision till the very last minute. And even though you've got people like physics teachers who I suppose are a bit like the personal trainers, they know what people should be doing. They can help motivate people, but ultimately it has to come down to that individual student to do the work. And I thought, rather than having an open-ended task or something where people don't know exactly how to do their work, if I could get students to do a very small amount of work every single day with a date on it as well, so they know what they have to be doing that day, it's a manageable amount of work and it's something that they can keep on top of. So rather than letting it build up to this colossal amount of work, it's something they can just keep sort of chipping away at every single day, and hopefully over a couple of years the effects will really compound and students will have a really good understanding. So that was the idea. It's just something that I haven't really seen done before for A-level physics or any other kind of A-level courses or physics courses that I know about.
Yeah, totally true. I think, you end up with people who work in schools maybe producing these on the go as maybe like PowerPoint slides, like, go and have a go at this, or handouts and things like that. But to have it actually all contained is something else entirely. And as you say, it brings the onus back to the student. And that's really powerful when you're trying to move people forward in their learning. So yeah, it's absolutely a great idea. So how did you go about making sure that the sections were manageable, but also help the students to progress?
Because I suppose there's that danger of I maybe think, is this question hard enough? Are they going to find it too easy and get bored of it? Or is it going to be so challenging that they'll have a look at it, not be able to attempt it and just give up for that day? So for the first book, I've got 3 questions a day. And a lot of it is actually, is quite simple stuff. And a lot of it is actually quite difficult to write questions for, because the first book has questions from July, which is after the students might have finished their GCSEs. And then there's 4 months worth of questions in that first book. And it was actually quite difficult trying to make questions that they could have a go at over July and August and September that were not just a repeat of what they've done at GCSE, but equally they weren't looking at the new skills that they haven't yet learned at A-level. Yeah. So it's actually quite difficult trying to think, okay, what do students know? What should they know? And how can I ask questions about it in I suppose, a progressive format in that first book? So I suppose I just started with a kind of a big plan for the 6 books I'm going to be writing. So the idea is that each book will have 4 months worth of questions, and it's got a date inside it as well. In actual fact, if I just flick onto it, you can see that every date's got the date. So 1st of August, these ones here are fairly straightforward. So calculate the area in meters squared of a circle with a radius of these different values. So I suspect most year 7 students could do that. But what I'm trying to do is just get them used to doing it again and again and again. And there's also, even on this question here, there's a link between, if you double the radius, what happens to the area? Well, there's that kind of R-squared relationship. We've got different units like centimeters and millimeters, which they've got to convert to meters. So nothing that any student wouldn't be able to do. But that then kind of repeats with other questions where they maybe get given the diameter rather than the radius, or they get given the circumference. And it's just that kind of basic skill that when they're doing those questions about maybe a wire that's being stretched, they've been given the diameter, do they instinctively know how to work out the area, maybe in square meters of a wire, even if it's been given in millimeters? So it's always with something in mind. And actually, I just started writing questions. I found actually that's quite difficult. So I went out on Twitter actually, and I had some other teachers who helped out as well. So they just came up with a bank of questions that I paid them a small amount to actually write for me. So I've got this kind of bigger bank of questions. And I also employ somebody part-time who's an ex-physics graduate, and he kind of put the first draft of the book together. And I thought, well, that's fine. They've done all the work. Wow. I'll just edit it and just check the punctuation. But actually, even though they all put in a huge amount of work, it still took me a long time to actually put this book together. Probably a couple of months of solid work. Wow. Sort of working full time on it to kind of get that first book done.
Yeah, well, it certainly shows. I think what I really like about the way it's put together is that, the initial questions and skills are, as you said, probably things they're capable of. But I think it really pulls out the relevance to physics, because not all students are going to realise that those calculations they learnt way back are actually going to be so important moving forwards in physics, and actually keeping that gap bridged between when they learnt it and as they move into A-level is going to be so useful. We've got a question from Alex, actually.
Yes.
Which I'm going to put up onto the screen. So, hi, Lewis. Would the book be available so far be suitable for year 12 to 13 work, or are the later books going to be better here?
Yeah, great question. So I really designed this first book for students going into year 12. Now, I know that a lot of students, they might not even know about the book if they've just sat their GCSEs, and it's only maybe when they get to school in September that they hear about this book. So even if a student was to buy this book maybe in September or get a hold of it in October, they could easily just work through it retrospectively. So I suspect if they sat down for the weekend, they could maybe over one weekend do all of the questions for maybe July or August. And that's something that either a student could do completely off their own back, or as a teacher, you might decide questions which they should have a go at. Which ones do you think are really important to build that kind of key knowledge for going into September? I would say that a lot of students actually bought this in January, February, March time this year when I first released it. And that's a lot of year 12 students who are using it, even though they'd already covered most of the basics. They still found it incredibly useful just to revise some of that kind of core content or things that they might not have covered in lessons, especially with a few people missing lessons due to COVID. A lot of students who we assume they'll know this from GCSEs still don't really have that good knowledge of all the GCSE subjects because they weren't assessed on it. And I think that although this would be suitable for maybe somebody in year 12 going to year 13, it's really designed for year 12 at the moment. And I suppose over the next couple of years, as I release books 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, which have questions for the later part of year 12 and all the way through year 13, that will be more suitable. I suppose, Alex, if you're not sure, you can always get a copy of the book, maybe share it with some of your year 12s now and see what they think about it. But I would say that even though it's for the start of year 12, there are some maybe quite challenging questions. So one thing I did was I looked at ways of using different scales. So we've got some vernier scales here, and what I started with were some kind of worked examples, and then every day in October I had slightly different questions that students could have a go at. Now, I reckon a student could learn that themselves off their own back, because it's really just a logical kind of like a thought problem, really, isn't it? It's you don't need to know what the instrument looks like to read that scale. But I suspect that plenty of students at the end of year 12 still wouldn't know how to read this. So that's why I've tried to include them early on, so they're familiar with it, maybe before they see maybe the real bits of equipment that you're showing them in the lab. So yeah, I reckon it may be suitable for somebody in year 12, but really it's for somebody at the start of the course.
Yeah, I think as well, though, it's, we should remember that for some students, it's one of those, well, it's never too late kind of things.
Oh, exactly.
There's probably students out there who would absolutely benefit from just being given this pack and being like, come on, let's just work through this. Let's go and let's have a look at the, the skills building up as they go through. And it's like you said about the students who've missed learning and those who probably haven't revisited, for example, the use of micrometers very much at all. It probably only comes at once. So keeping those skills up, I'm sure, is beneficial to most students. And honestly, it's something that I'm certainly looking at using with mine. So, having been through it, read it, and really bought into the idea is certainly something that I'll be looking at using going forward, even with the year 12s we've currently got. And you mentioned you mentioned the worked examples there. What purpose do you hope that they serve?
So I suppose I've designed the book so that a student could buy it completely independently of their teacher, and they can have a go at the questions, and they might find that some of it is pretty straightforward, pretty easy stuff. And then they might find there's some of them which are a bit more tricky. Now, in the back of the book, I do have I've got solutions in the back of the book, which I think is really useful just for that kind of quick check, and you've got the numerical answer. But what I found, especially as a teacher, is lots of textbooks might have the answers, but they don't say how to get to that point. Yeah. So I suppose the advantage I've had is, having made a lot of video content about physics, is I've got the website where I can host videos. So you can basically scan the QR code in the book, and it takes you to my website where you can download full work solutions. So this is just a PDF. It's got the whole month worth of questions, and it's got my teacher answers of how I'd actually approach that question. So it's got the working out. And also, because I make videos, I've got a full video where I explain every single question as well. So if a student can't do the question and they can't work it out from the answer in the back of the book, they can then see the work solution and see a video on that work solution. And ultimately, if they still can't do that question, or they don't understand it, that's hopefully when they can come to you as a teacher and say, Miss, could you help me out with this? Because I'm not quite sure what I do next. And I think that's something that I've found as a teacher, is that students will often ask me stupid questions, because they say there's never a stupid question, but sometimes there are stupid there's questions which maybe students are asking before they've really had a go at that problem themselves. And I always really liked it when students came to me where they had a good question, it was clear they'd had a look at it and they tried to solve it themselves. And only when they kind of exhausted their own abilities, they actually came to me to ask for help. And normally then they were the questions which were really difficult, the kind of Isaac physics ones that I couldn't do. And me and the other kind of teachers would be like arguing about and discussing, trying to work out the right answer. So I tried to make it something that a student could have this book and they could work through completely independently. And that would kind of hopefully solve most of their problems. I suppose as well, it's something that I designed that a teacher could suggest to their students, and the students could take it away. And by having it in a physical book format, it means that students can keep everything in one place so that they can see that progression. It's not like just a load of worksheets which are kind of jammed into a folder and lost on the floor somewhere. It's kind of in one book, it's basically everything which is 4 months' work. And I suspect if you were to look at what the students are producing, you'd have a very clear indication of who's motivated, who's putting that little bit of extra work at home, and who wants to succeed, as opposed to maybe who's just scraping by and doing the bare minimum of working class. So I reckon a lot of people are using this for work over this summer. They've seen it already, they've set it as work, and often that might be a whole school buying a whole set of books to give to their students. I mean, again, it really depends on the intake you have coming into September. But I reckon if you were to look at this book on that first lesson, you could see, okay, these people are going to do well in A-levels because they've put that extra bit of work in. And maybe some people have only done the bare minimum, and they're probably going to find it a harder transition into that A-level way of working.
Yeah. And if I'm going to be really frank about it, you can almost use that with the students, can't you? Because you usually find that the ones putting in the time and putting in the effort to go away and find the answers before they come to you, like you said, you want them to have a go first. If they don't have a go first and they just come and ask you, are they really learning it, or are they just hearing the answer? And I think that's what gets me with the students. They often come in and go, I don't know how to do this.
Yeah, and there's also and there's also students who will have flown through GCSEs, they'll have done a bit of last minute revision, they'll have got a grade 9 and thought, do you know what, I'm pretty good at physics, I don't need to work that hard. And they're the ones who then, they kind of crash out and burn sometimes, where they've done really well, they've been used to succeeding, and suddenly they've come into such a high level of working that their previous strategies of doing everything last minute don't always get them the results that they're wanting. I suppose the other thing I've got, which I can do with this book, is that because it's kind of set out by date, and it's I have done it Monday to Friday, it's a book that can last for many years. So the 5th of August, these questions, are going to be useful for every 5th of August going forward.
Yeah.
But I can also, and the plan is to like signpost more things that students need to be aware of as they go through A-levels. At the moment, a lot of students are now thinking about UCAS applications in year 12, and they'll be writing their personal statements probably in September, October time, by which point they need to think, okay, what can I add to my personal statement to make me stand out from the crowd? And obviously everybody's doing A-level physics if they're going for those kind of courses. And it's only when they kind of often write their personal statements where they think, well, I didn't do any work experience over the summer. I didn't go on the right university trips. I haven't done these online masterclasses that universities are providing. I never got around to signing up for the British Physics Olympiad. I haven't used Isaac Physics regularly. And it's often that people find out about this stuff too late, and then they think, what can I add to my personal statement? So my idea is that I can add information about, great things like, for example, the British Physics Olympiad have their year 12 summer challenge in January. But students need to know about it beforehand so they can ask their teachers to maybe enter their school for that. And that means they've done stuff in good time. So by the time they're even thinking about their UCAS statements, they've already completed most of the things they need to in year 12. And that's another thing I really want to add is the kind of things that students need to be aware of in plenty of time, so they're aware of the right things at the right point in that course.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. So I just love the idea of thinking ahead, and I know for us in our department, it's really thinking ahead and making sure students have those opportunities that are going to help them to be head and shoulders above some others, because it's so hard for them to do it by themselves. And we were speaking earlier about how important it is to support the students to be successful, not just always supporting the teachers to help the students to be successful, but when you're going straight to the students themselves, it can almost be a little bit more empowering for those students moving forwards, because they've got a handle on what they can do. They've got the access at their fingertips, rather than, a lot of them use some great websites out there to support their own learning, but then they kind of get lost because they kind of fit the bill for some of what they need, but not for everything. So I absolutely agree with having this sort of schedule going forwards, really supportive for the students. Absolutely. I think you've just answered my next question, actually. So that's that one. So we were talking a little bit earlier about how you sort of scheduled going forwards, and I was thinking a little bit more about the content that you've got for July and August. So for those of you listening, or those of you who will be listening, now is a really good time to look at purchasing or sharing these books with students, because it starts in the July. And what Lewis has managed to do is pull out those skills that are sort of relevant to physics, but prior learned by students, or at least some stuff that I guess we could say that it's skills that even if they've not really been taught it in physics yet, they should be capable of learning by themselves.
Absolutely. So I think, and if they're going to be doing A-level physics, then, they're fairly motivated because they've chosen to do that course. They will have a lot of skills for maths, like using trigonometry and Pythagoras and just those kind of basic triangle things, which they then maybe can't always apply to maybe an object on a slope, and it's looking at resolving vectors and so on. And that's the kind of skill that we teach in year 12, but it's the kind of skills they've already got that basic ability, and it's hopefully developing that over the book. And I suppose I'd be really interested to hear from teachers about how some of their students get on in September, and maybe the students who haven't had a go at this book and those who've completed the whole thing, and maybe see how they compare in terms of how they get on in those first few lessons.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it'd be really interesting, and I'm definitely one for looking at correlations. I think I share them quite often with students as well. I'm like, oh, look at who completed all their homework and look at who's doing well. Like, let's look for correlations, guys. Things like that, definitely. Now, there's quite a few schools around who have an external intake, and it's quite difficult for them to sort of get the stuff for the students who are external by July, say. So we had a good 10 students the other day who hopefully will be joining us externally. Do you have any advice on how you might best use these books for those external students?
So I found actually that so when I was at a school where we had a sixth form as part of the school, most of the students who came to the induction days in June tended to be there in A-level in September, but then there'd be other people who maybe made that choice last minute. There'd be other people who signed up for the induction day then didn't do A-level physics, and there'd also be people coming from external schools that we didn't even know about at all. Now, a lot of those students, they can buy the book themselves, so the book is available on Amazon. And the way it's published is that it's an Amazon self-published book. So as soon as they order, it gets printed and shipped by Amazon. So they deal with all of the printing and packaging and all that kind of money side of things. So students can get hold of it, even if they're not going to your school at the moment. So they don't need to physically receive a copy from the teacher. They can buy it themselves. And also what's really nice is that students are wanting to buy it. It's not being something that they are all being forced into by their teachers. It is students having seen what I put out there. They've seen the sample chapter on the website. They've really bought into it, especially those who are, really motivated and working hard for their GCSE. So a lot of people have already self-selected to actually use it. And I suppose even if they miss out on buying the book now and they maybe don't do that work over the holidays, I reckon if they had access to the book in September, they could easily maybe just choose some of the questions, even if they were to just read through it and maybe even without actually answering the question, they could read through a lot of it and just think, I can do that, I can do this, or I can't do that. And that's the ones that they do. Or it might be as a teacher, you might say, well, just do these questions here and you just circle it, or give the questions that they should be having a go at. And that would be like a manageable workload rather than bombarding them with too much. My hope, of course, going forward is that into the future, a lot more people are aware of the book. So as teachers are planning for the next intake in 2023, is it now? People will know about it well in advance. They can maybe advise people when they're actually starting A-level physics that this is something that's recommended for them to have a go at as a bit of self-directed study over the holidays.
Definitely. I can almost imagine people sort of pushing this book out to the younger ones as well. The ones who almost need to get that advanced start because, like you said about GCSE earlier, there's an awful lot of capable students out there who are rattling through GCSE, achieving very highly and needing that extra challenge. I wouldn't be surprised if people are, sharing this book a little bit further down just so they've got something to work towards. And it's, those skills are never going to hurt. They're never beyond what they need. They just kind of fill in those gaps where they've probably already got questions about things like measurements and how things tie in together. So,
at the moment, I'm working on measurements and errors and uncertainties for book 2, and that's a whole amount of work trying to make sure that I've got something which can be used by any student doing any exam board. So that's definitely a difficulty. So it's something that it's like the more you look into it, you think, well, is it a reading or a measurement? Because different exam boards will explain things in different ways, and but it's trying to make something as well which is suitable for any student doing any exam board.
That's it,
which is something which is actually, again, quite a challenge. If I just wrote it for AQA, it would be easy. And that's what most people are doing. But then I'd be missing out or maybe doing a disservice to students doing EduCAS or the Welsh Board or CIE or a SEA in Northern Ireland. And there's a lot of these smaller exam boards where the students don't often get resources made for them because it's not AQA or ACR. So I'm trying to do that as well. Obviously being mindful of the fact that even if schools teach exactly the same exam board, they teach the topics in a different order. So one student might be starting AQA physics with the kind of particle side of things.
That's it.
And another student might not see that until year 13 if they're taking OCR. So it's trying to make stuff which is relevant without basically giving students lots of questions they could never have a go at, while also not making it too easy so there's no challenge and no stretch for them.
That's it, because if it's entirely in the wrong order for them, then it's almost a kind of non-starter for them, isn't it? So, really important to make sure it's sort of exam board agnostic, really. But, definitely. I noticed, actually, you've put at the end of each month a review section. So what's your thoughts behind using those?
So I suppose in the sections as well, I've got a bit of an introduction of maybe what's happening in September. So like this one here, I've got in September, just get the basic kit. And I mean, most students don't have protractors and they don't have them even before their real A-level exams, but it's kind of like a bit of a timely reminder. And then we've got the questions and you can see there's, even in September, I've got these ones which start out fairly easy. So this is just some triangle geometry. So similar triangles, if we know that angle, what's that one? Well, students can do that in year 7, but as we sort of go through the days, it kind of builds up until we're looking at looking at perpendicular and parallel components of weight for an object on a slope. And so it's designed to be progressive. And then at the end of the month, I just wanted students to really see what they're capable of. So the review for September has, I can express some derived units in their base units. I can recall electrical circuit symbols, so that's just GCSE. I can calculate the equation for a straight line. Y equals mx plus c. And really, it's about just letting students realise what they've achieved. And so hopefully they can go through this and go, well, I can apply the equation for resistors in parallel because they've done it already in the book. So they can just tick that. And it's designed to be relatively easy things, but they, rather than thinking, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this, even if they've done most of the questions in that chapter, they'll still have a really good understanding. So hopefully it'll give students a bit of a boost in their confidence, really. So it's not designed to be super critical, as in it might not be they can always apply equations about resistors in parallel, but they can apply some basic equations and just work out, if you've got two resistors in parallel, can they work out their total resistance, which is something that most students won't have actually calculated at GCSE. So that it's designed to like push them that little bit and also allow it to them to sort of teach it to themselves. And it's never designed to replace what teachers are doing. It's not designed to spoil your lessons that you've got planned, but it's designed that students have a bit of an understanding. And when they're in your lesson, they can be like, oh, I remember doing something like this. And now I understand it fully. Now that and hopefully it clicks in the lesson, rather than being that kind of thing that they've never ever seen before and have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's the idea.
Yeah, and it goes back to students being able to drive themselves. And so I was one of those people who did self-teach A-level physics, and actually I just wish I'd have had this when I was there, because for me it was very much doing topic at a time. Just doing textbook questions, which were sort of adequate, but we all know that textbook questions aren't always the best. Well, not since some of those fantastic books that we often speak about. But putting this all together and having it more like a progression of, I think it's almost more like a progression of skills as well. You know, noticing the questions you've got on, such as derived base units and things like that. It's not getting them to just state it, it's getting them to work it out, because the questions you have are not that straightforward, and it's going to make them think and it's going to make them process. So absolutely driving the students forward. And looking at the book, obviously you just showed a little bit, you've got quite a lot of words in bold. So what are the words in bold and what's their purpose?
I think I just wanted to highlight some of the key words, really. That's all it is, nothing more to it than that. But it's not so much the command words, it's more about, define longitudinal and transverse waves, and a diagram may be useful. So it's just, as they kind of scan through it, it just tries to make it very clear what they have to be maybe defining, or they're calculating the volume, they're calculating the pressure. So it's just really trying to just have some of the key words that they need to really focus on as they're actually explaining their answers, really. So that's all it is, really, just to, because I suppose there's lots of things that I've read, especially as a teacher, looking at kind of bits of educational research, which there might be amazing research, but it's not easy to understand. And I think what I want to try and do is not just have masses of text that students really have to wade through trying to find out what's important. I want to make it as simple and easy so they can actually understand what the questions are asking. And again, this first book is very much the kind of skills, the kind of basic knowledge. And as I develop books 3 and 6 especially, I'm going to maybe think a bit more about the kind of exam skills. Now, obviously, I don't want it to be just about this is just what you've got to learn for the exam, but I think that is an important thing, that if they want to progress, and most students doing A-level physics are going to be going on to university afterwards, they need to be able to do well in those exams. And I'll probably have more of an exam focus and a revision focus in the kind of summer term, when students in year 12 are probably going to be doing mock exams. A few people might be doing AS levels, but not many. And then really book 6 is going to be like the time when students need that kind of structure to their revision, rather than just doing lots of easy questions. They need to have those kind of revision skills absolutely sort of dialed, really. So again, that's what, students in year 13, they know they're going to be doing past papers, and really that's where book 6, when I write it, will have more of an exam focus, and maybe think about the command words, thinking about how to get as many marks as possible for the things they need. But that's all it is, really. Just trying to make it simple and easy to use.
I think it's interesting that you put the words in bold in, and I think it's one of those where, I've seen a lot of cases where students have come in and attempted to answer a question, but they've actually been a little bit misled by the information that's there, because, things like diameter comes up all over the place. It comes up when we do the resistance of wires. It then comes up when we're doing circular motion. And it then comes up when we're doing like purely about the structure of a nucleus, and actually drawing the attention to what they should be physically working with, as opposed to what is almost, I don't want to say background noise, but it's probably a little bit distracting to have so many quantities, for example, in a question, the students really need to pull out the focus on what it is they're actually working with and calculating and determining. So yeah, I think it's quite interesting to put that in there, especially in the earlier books. It's going to pull the student focus back. I mean, I don't know if you agree, but getting students moving on to A-level, you know, they're so used to at GCSE having questions that are a little bit more straightforward, and the only information is given is what they actually need to use in that question or coming up. Whereas at A-level, it can be like this whole host of information and diagrams where they could feasibly pull out so many different quantities, so many different values, and then they sort of get into this confusion about how to use them and know which ones to work with. So I quite like the use of the bold for pulling it back there.
And definitely, hopefully, by the end of this first book, they will know that you know, the area is pi d squared over 4, which is something that it's you know, I use that all the time. And people say, why don't you use a radius? But it's like, well, if you've already been given the diameter, if that's what you're measuring, if that's what your uncertainty is often relating to, then actually, often, you know, using pi d squared over 4 rather than pi r squared is a more useful equation. And they will be probably given a question. I mean, I've seen loads of past papers where they have a diameter in millimeters. And they then have to maybe work out the stress in the wire where there's force over area in square meters. And hopefully they might make a mistake. If they make mistakes in the book, that's fine, because they can go, oh yeah, I've made a mistake there. I need to convert it to meters. I need to convert it, you know, into an area which is going to be really tiny. But I think that's hopefully, if they can make mistakes in the book and they always identify that, it means when they're doing more past papers or questions in class, they won't be making these small little errors.
Absolutely, definitely. So you put in some worked examples, as we looked at earlier, and I really like the handwritten style that you've got going on there. What made you choose to do this sort of handwritten style? Is that kind of a modeling process?
I think there's a few reasons. Partly it's, I think it's the kind of thing that students would be doing themselves. So it's a physical book only, so students have to write in by hand. I did think about doing a Kindle ebook instead that students could annotate, but I don't think it's as useful if you're showing worked examples which are all typed out, which are going to be very different to the way that people would actually be working through the things themselves. And, you know, I know Isaac Physics is brilliant, and I think it's a great platform. And I've always said to students, you know, do your working out and then type the answers in. But lots of students, they would just type the answers in without even working stuff out by hand first, even though that's like the way it should be done. And I wanted to model, this would be my approach. I suppose the other thing is it kind of fits in with the way that I've done a lot of my videos. So it sort of fits in with my brand, which is not just having typed up notes, which are fairly generic. I mean, you know, look at a lot of the book, it could have been, I suppose, written by anybody. But it's things like at the start where I have the worked examples with the way that I'd approach it. I've got some extra kind of bits of information saying, you know, that's 3 significant figures, that's standard form, I've got my working out, you know, all this kind of stuff here. That's the kind of thing that I would expect as a teacher to be seeing all over this book, not just the neat answer. And I don't mind if people are messy when they're working stuff out. And also, so this kind of fits in with the way that I've always done videos, where rather than having a beautiful set of printed out notes or a PowerPoint slide I talk over, I always try and build things up one stage at a time. And I just think it's the way that students are going to be working. So that's what I should be doing as a teacher, to model that, rather than just having, you know, typed out, perfectly neat working out, which isn't actually sometimes as useful as doing it by hand.
No, not at all. And I think the handwritten notes are perfect for showing them. You know, it might sound really silly, but actually showing them, annotating the key information, like you said, things about significant figures and the like, you know, it shows them to do it. And that modeling process is going to quite possibly make at least some students think, oh, I remember this worked example, and there was this annotation where we really thought about the information that was given in terms of significant figures or decimal places, whatever it is they're working with. So I thought that was really quite powerful. And as you said, seeing typed up things too often doesn't reflect what they're going to be doing in the exam. And you know, there's a place for neat working, and I just don't think problem solving is one of them. So go forwards. Absolutely brilliant. So tell us a little bit about how book 2 progresses.
So I've written November, I've worked through my solutions, and today I spent about 4 hours just typing up the answers in the back of the book, which a lot of the time everything just takes so long, because trying to put the answers in, just the formatting of trying to make sure that everything's in columns, it's neat, trying to draw graphs which are quite small, it's actually quite an enjoyable task, but it's just a time-consuming thing to do. So basically, at the moment, November is complete, and I've kind of halfway through December, and I've just got January and February to do. And even though I've got the draft and I've got the kind of rough copy that Joe Cattermole put together for me, that's very much a kind of a basis. And then I go back, and then there's a lot of toing and froing. So I'll make some adjustments. I'll send it off to Joe. Joe will work through the answers. I will check through his answers, and he'll see all the notes and things that I've made wrong, so I'll adjust those. I send it to somebody else who works for me part-time, James, and he will find, like, if it's formatting, if it's the grammar, because my English isn't that great. But everything, it's just going back and forwards all the time, and it's we'll have the kind of final draft, and then we'll keep checking through it several more times, and no doubt there will be some mistakes in the first editions which are printed. But the advantage of being a Kindle book is that if there is a mistake, I can re-update the manuscript. So, for example, if I'd made a massive error in book 1, I could tonight adjust it, and I could re-upload it, and people buying the book tomorrow would have the corrected version.
Wow.
So, and that's something which I found that I've used plenty of textbooks at school that have issues with them, and you know that there's mistakes in the working out, or there's mistakes in the book somewhere, and they just sit on the shelves for years and years.
Yeah.
Whereas these
They're
ones
not going to get replaced, are they?
Never. And so things like, for example, on the website, I've got it's only a few, but there's like a page of corrections. So if you did buy a copy a couple of months ago and you're not sure about something, you can see the correction sheet. So that's always a great way for previous editions for people to kind of check if there's any mistakes. People haven't found any mistakes for months now, so I'm hopefully. I think book 1 is good, but book 2, it's just that grind of going into stuff, writing questions, checking the answers, making sure that there's no ambiguity in what the answer could be, and also trying to work out what the correct physics is, because a lot of the time teachers can't decide about the way that things should be presented.
So true.
Like, is it EMF or is it a lowercase EMF, or are there dots? And it's just one of those kind of things where there's no standard for a lot of things. I mean, a lot of it's kind of fairly straightforward, but some of it it's difficult. And I want to make sure that anybody having the book isn't confused and unsure. There's like this is a question, this is what the answer should be, and there's a reason why it's that answer.
Yeah, definitely. It certainly looks like a quality product. So, I think the time that's being put into it is certainly paying off. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So how do you think the teachers are going to feel about the fact that the answers are in the back? How do you think they're going to feel about those who might take more advantage than we'd hope?
I think that, a student could basically get the book and they could copy everything down. But I don't think many students are going to do that. I think the kind of students who are going to be using this book and buying into it are the ones who want to, because they've chosen to do A-level physics. It's not like a GCSE student who's just thinking, I need to get through this. This is the homework. I'm just going to copy it all out. I think it is good to have the answers that students can refer to. I understand why Isaac Physics don't produce answers, but I think that's really frustrating at times when students can't access the right answer, even if they spent half an hour having a go at that problem. They just cannot work it out, and there's no way for them to find out what the right answer is. So I think that having the answers in the back, I wouldn't say that's a downside for teachers. Ultimately, most textbooks tend to have answers there anyway, and also past papers do. And I think that I've got it. So there's this level of if they want to find the answer quickly, they can just flick to the back just to kind of check if they're correct or not. If they really want to delve into it, that's when they have to go to the website. So that means they're being proactive to actually find what the answers are. And I think it's only going to shortchange some of those students in the short term.
That's it. And I think the work that's going in behind it, if you having the worked solutions and the videos to support that, is just absolutely fantastic. I know we've had a little bit of a back and forth on Twitter over Isaac Physics, actually. And I actually love the fact that the answers aren't given. I absolutely love that. But I also think it's so important that not everybody does that. If every set of questions that the students were attempting didn't have answers, it would be really problematic. And I think because a lot of the questions that you do, it's a daily workout, it's a skills thing. I think it benefits so much more by having the answers. But then Isaac Physics, on the other hand, I would say is a completely different approach altogether. So while some people might not like it, having that actually, let's trial and error this. Let's go back and review all the time.
Yeah.
There's huge benefit there, but it serves a different purpose, doesn't it? So
it is, and this is never designed to replace Isaac Physics or other things out there. So it might be that you're doing this every day, and it kind of just builds up your core skills. And then you might go to Isaac Physics, you do the mastery things, you can just blast through that. So you've just done that one topic that you concentrate on. Whereas this tends to be using different topics each day. So it's that kind of broad spectrum of the whole course. Whereas Isaac Physics, you can just go really deep into one topic. Or you can go for the really, really challenging questions. And there's one that I made a video about, actually, because I couldn't get the answer. Lots of other teachers couldn't get the answer. And even when the answer was given to me by another teacher who worked it out, it still took me about 40 minutes of looking through his work for me to get to that answer.
Wow.
And so I think there's like a level 5 or a level 6 question bank capacitors, but it's and I think this isn't what the book is designed to be. This is hopefully fairly straightforward, easy things. Although in the next book I do have questions from the Olympiad, which they've been kind enough to let me use. So they're based on GCSE knowledge and common sense, I suppose, but actually they are quite tricky questions. So that'll be the kind of thing that students can have a go at. They might be thinking about it for a while, and there might be the answer in the back of the book saying 3.1 meters per second, but it doesn't give the working out in the book. So if they really want to find out more about it, they can go to the website, they can download the work solutions. But hopefully that makes them think, okay, this question's really good. It's really challenging. I like that, and I want to do more of that. So I might go down the Olympiad route, or I might maybe think about doing Oxford PAT tests in the future or something like that.
Oh, that'd be really exciting. I love the idea of having that more extended, more kind of out there physics. Just being a little bit more easy to reach, I think, because sometimes it takes so much digging, so much planning, and then it's kind of like, how are we going to sort of mold it into the curriculum? Because it can be so difficult taking, say, an Olympiad paper, and they jump about all over the place with questions. So it's not really easy to take and use. You almost need to wait till the end of the course, and then by then, should all the challenging questions come at the end of the course, or should we be embedding them? So it's quite difficult to really just reach out and use. So I'm excited to see what comes up with that.
Cool.
Yeah. So we are coming towards the end now. So for those of you who are watching at the moment, if you would like to be with a chance of winning one of these copies of Lewis's book, could you please pop your name into the comments? And I'm going to put you into a live draw, which we'll do while you are still online. So I think you've actually spoken quite a lot about what you're doing moving forwards. But over to you. What else can we get excited about? Is there anything you would like to tell us?
I suppose so. This is book 2. I do have other books actually that I've managed to do through Amazon. So I've got this A-level revision notebook, this is the first one I did just to see if the process works of how I actually put things up on Amazon, and seeing if the book kind of would actually get printed in the kind of quality I wanted. So this one's a very simple one. It's just very much a case of students can use it to structure their revision. And again, each section has QR codes where I explain about how to use this. So I've got this book that students can fill in as they're revising for A-level. I've got one for GCSE. I've got one for teachers. I also have a GCSE workbook, which has the worksheets for my website. And again, this one's got full work solutions in the back. But this has got a huge amount of worksheets for GCSE physics. So you can download them individually on the website at GCSE Physics Online. I also did an AQA revision guide, but this one's a digital-only download. So this is a revision guide that actually explains how to revise to students, because a lot of revision guides are just notebooks, or so they're textbooks, but brief textbooks, whereas this one talks a bit more about the course, the structure, how to revise, some of the videos I've made, and also how to use past papers. So this is kind of a free download you can find on my website there. So I suppose in addition to making books 2 all the way through to 6, I suppose my plan for the next few years really is to completely redo my A-level website. So refilm all the videos again. Now I've got better equipment. Hopefully I have other guest presenters. So it's not just me talking about physics. It's like a few different people who've maybe got subject specialisms about particle physics or the maths and things, as well as all the practicals for A-level all filmed with sample result tables. past papers. Yeah, I've got like 1 million videos to make, I think. So my plan is, if I can keep doing what I'm doing, then I can just keep investing, helping pay other people to help me with the resources, and then ultimately making the ultimate kind of one-stop place for A-level physics, which is better than anything else on the internet for not much money. That's the plan. That's about it, really. Oh, I can't hear you at the moment.
Literally just realised that I muted myself, so I didn't interrupt you. And I forgot. Yeah, so it's great what you're doing. Absolutely brilliant. Really excited hearing about you talk about the specialist bits as well. I know it's something that Chat Physics get a lot of. We get a lot of requests for. Oh, let's have some sort of like specialist physics knowledge content, and it's certainly going down well so far.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's
cool.
Really exciting too. We've actually got a question here.
Yes.
So Alvi says, I'm writing my own physics transition book. Do you have any tips and tricks when writing books?
Don't do it. I've already done it. I would say that it takes time. I think it's the kind of thing that when you're doing it, I think you just got to be mindful of the kind of students who might be doing that work. As in, if they're doing it at the summer holidays, they won't have that support of a teacher in school. So they've got to be able to, if they get stuck, they need to unstick themselves, because they won't have that class teacher. They might be going to a new school where they don't know their new teachers. So as much as you can, make it self-contained, so there's a clear amount of work that students can work through themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Really good advice there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully we will be able to see the spinner.
Oh, cool.
Okay.
Right.
So
1 in 3 chance then.
Yeah, literally. I know some of the people watching have already got the book. They've been commenting. Yep. So thank you for not entering. It's nicer for those that don't have one. So we have Alexandra, Alex and James. Good luck. Let's see who's getting a copy of the book. And whoever wins, please do DM us your details at Chat Physics on Twitter, and we'll share those with Lewis.
Cool. So who have we got? Alex. Fantastic.
Excellent. So congrats, Alex. If you DM us at Chat Physics on Twitter, we'll get that sent out for you. Lovely. Yep. So thanks everyone for watching. Thank you for those of you who actually participated with a few questions. That was really lovely. And Lewis, thank you so much to you for joining us.
No problem.
Really appreciate your time. Absolutely wonderful to be sharing your book. And if there's anything coming up in the future that we can get together again for, we'd be more than happy to have you again.
Yeah, I'd love to. Thank you.
Fabulous. So for those of you at home, thank you so much and goodbye. Well done, Alex. And goodbye from us. Thank you so much.
Goodbye. Bye.